Have you ever felt like the cost of living in the US is crushing you? Meet Mike, an American who moved to Panama and saw his expenses drop dramatically. From affordable oceanfront condos to top-notch healthcare, he's living the dream on a budget. And here's the kicker. Raising kids in Panama is safer and more affordable than you thought. Stick around until the end to see why families are thriving here. So let's start off by getting your name, how old you are, and where you're from.
Eric, thank you for coming out here and doing this interview. Really cool. My name is Mike Kelly. I am 42 years old from Orange County, California, Newport Beach to be exact. Grew up there and I moved here to Panama about 12 years ago. Living in Panama City for 12 years. My wife is Panamanian, and I actually met her in California.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we both went to college there, and I met her there, and I had previously lived in Costa Rica for about a year, so I had already spoken Spanish, and I loved the Latin culture, and wanted to get back down to Costa Rica. When I met her, she was like, well, why don't you come down to Panama? And I was like, well, I don't know anything about Panama because I didn't know anything about it at that time. But when I came down, I fell in love with it and started coming. That was back in like 2004 or 5.
So before coming to Panama, you were in Costa Rica?
Yeah, so before I lived in Panama, I lived in Costa Rica for a year, and then I went back to California.
Yeah, how was living in Costa Rica? What year did you go?
I lived there in 2001, so it was a while ago.
Before it exploded with all the new tourism, the new expats there now, right?
It was like right as it was starting to really explode. So I was still there in a really good time when I could go to the beach. There weren't too many people there, still kind of pristine. I loved Costa Rica. I wanted to move there and live there for the rest of my life at one point. I was traveling around. I was at all the beaches. I surfed. So
have you been back since you visited before?
I've been back. I've been back many times. But since I've lived in Panama, I have not been back. Costa Rica is beautiful. It holds a place in my heart for sure. But when I met my wife and she was here, I said, you know what? Panama's close. Probably similar to Costa Rica. When I came down here, I fell in love with it. I couldn't imagine living anywhere else but Panama.
So this is your paradise here on earth.
This is it, for sure.
This is the one. And you went to Costa Rica, you went back to California, and that's when you met your now wife.
Yeah, I'd gone home from Costa Rica, trying to figure out how I was going to get back there. I was living back in Newport Beach in California. And then I moved to San Diego for school. And I met my wife, who was also studying at San Diego State. I was teaching wakeboarding. So I grew up wakeboarding, and I got a job as a wakeboard instructor at the Mission Bay Aquatic Center there. She was taking a class, and I just happened to meet her there. It's a long story, but to make it short, I saw her there. She was speaking Spanish, and I was like, well, where's she from? And I started speaking Spanish to her, and we basically just hit it off, and I became her private wakeboard instructor. And so that was how it started. But that was back in 2004. So I started to come to Panama with her like once or twice a year. And so that's when I really started to get to know the country. For me, it was amazing because it was so similar to Costa Rica and like the scenery and the beaches and everything, but there was so much more. Like Panama City is on another level. It's a huge bustling metropolis. Some of the best.
Super developed also. I was super surprised by how developed Panama City actually was.
Yeah, super developed. When you're in Panama City, you do not feel like you're in like a third world country. You feel like you're in a first world, similar to Miami. People compare Panama City to Miami. You got the tall sky rises. Yeah, so you can get ocean view condo for a fraction of what that would cost in the United States. In walking distance, you have like the best restaurants, some of the best food you can get in Central America. You've got some of the best coffee. Panama has amazing coffee. Just hidden gems. Old Town in Casco Viejo is one of my favorite places in the world. It's old, it was founded in the 1600s, and it's just a really cool vibe. You have so much stuff in this city, and it's unique. I mean, there's nothing like it in Central or South America, in my opinion.
Did you live in Panama City?
When I moved to Panama, we came straight to Panama City.
Yeah.
And so that's where my wife grew up. And so when we moved back down...
What area is she from in Panama City?
She's from a neighborhood called La Alameda, which is near El Dorado. So it's about a 5-minute drive from like downtown, where you have like Punta Pacifica and where all of the nightlife and everything is. She grew up real close to there.
And did you live there with her when you moved here, or did you live in a different part of Panama City?
Before we moved here, we bought a house in Panama Pacifico, and it was pre-construction, so it wasn't ready yet. So when we moved here, we rented in downtown Panama City while our house was being built.
Right.
So we were like in the thick of it. We were like right downtown. Where we live now is like a suburb of the city.
Yeah.
It's about 15, 20 minutes outside of downtown. So
the satellite city on West Panama, right?
West
the
Panama,
different
yes.
province, but it's connected by that bridge,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's right over the bridge on the other side of the canal. So it's nice because you feel we're close enough to the city. Like I'm there in 15 minutes, but when I'm home, it's quiet.
Right.
I don't feel like I'm in the hustle and bustle, but I do love the hustle and bustle of Panama City. Like I'm there every day. The cultural aspect of Panama City is what really sets it apart. There's so much culture, like you're speaking Spanish, you're among the people. It's a great experience.
Do you think it's superior to living in some of the smaller towns, especially maybe the more expat hubs where there's a big portion of them are from the US and Canada? Do you think it's like a superior place in that respect?
I definitely do. I think it's superior in the fact that you have so many options for living. You can get an oceanfront, amazing condo. You can live in a house in a residential community with a big yard. It's also superior because you're really immersed in the Panamanian culture. There are a lot of other places that you can live, like Boquete, for example, or Coronado, where you really end up in kind of a tight expat
Community.
enclave.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of times you don't feel like you're really getting the true experience. You're not speaking Spanish. Everyone speaks English. But if you want to have like that true, authentic experience where you're really immersed in Panama, then I would say that Panama City is superior. And you also have, as far as healthcare goes, so a lot of people that move down here have healthcare concerns. You have the best hospitals, 4 or 5 of the best hospitals in Panama within a 5 to 10 minute radius.
And you won't have that out in the smaller cities, would you?
No, in the smaller cities, you're far removed. If you need healthcare or it's an urgent issue, you're going to have to go to the city. Most likely that's where you're going to have to go.
I heard that even Boquete doesn't even have a hospital there.
Boquete does not have a hospital.
Right.
There's a city called David, which is about 45 minutes to an hour from Boquete.
Right.
That's where the nearest hospital is. So if you have an urgent medical issue in Boquete, then somehow you're going to have to get to that hospital, and it's not always convenient. So it's tough. I mean, Panama City, for a lot of reasons, in my opinion, is the best place to live in Panama, but there's something for everybody. You have amazing beach towns. Boquete, it does have advantages. You're higher up, cooler climate.
Which you definitely don't have in Panama City. Panama City is very hot.
Panama City, it's warm. Yeah,
so you need AC. That needs to be calculated into your budget. I've figured that out the hard way. Where I live is not with an AC, and it's something that I think if you want to be comfortable in the sea level area, which is Panama City, which is the West Panama where you're at, or not all of it, but some parts of it, then yeah, that's kind of something to take into consideration. If you're enjoying this interview and you're interested in seeing more content like this, you can check out my playlist called the Expat Interview Playlist, where I have been interviewing people from Guatemala all the way down through Central America and now here in South America.
First of all, it's the quality of life. I moved here from the United States, and you feel like you're in the rat race, especially in places like California. Cost of living there is really high. Here you have a dramatic drop in the cost of living. I'm mainly talking about living. If you want to rent or buy, the cost to rent here is significantly lower for what you get, and the cost to purchase. So if you compare what you can get here to something similar in the United States, there's so much more value here. That's a big part of it. When we were thinking about moving here, we were taking that into account. I have 2 kids.
How old are they?
8 and 12. My daughter is 12 and my son is 8. We're thinking about school and daycare. We moved here when my daughter was just a baby. Right. And so we were able to get a nanny that basically lived with us in full-time care for our baby for a fraction of what that costs in the United States. A lot of times in the United States, that's not even something that you can consider because it's so expensive.
It's literally just the 1%, the really small fraction can actually afford that service.
And here it's something that's actually within your reach. It makes a big difference, especially for us. We moved down here, we had a lot of help with my wife's family and with our nanny that we were able to afford. And it was great care, just amazing attention. Things like that just make a huge difference. So,
and the schools are quite good for your children as well?
Yeah, the schools are great. My kids actually go now to the same school that my wife went to.
Oh, wow.
So it's a private school. A lot of the classes are taught in English, which is huge.
Bilingual, that's good.
So the kids in private schools here in Panama, the kids are learning English and Spanish at the same time. The level of being bilingual is very high. For me, I couldn't imagine raising my kids outside of Panama, especially not in California with everything that's going on. We live in a neighborhood where my kids can go out and run around, just have fun, and we don't have to really worry about it. Another issue and a huge point that really helped us in our decision to move here was the safety.
Quality of life, number one, which you made a good point. Safety was something I was going to ask you about, because I personally have had zero issues with safety. I've driven past some kind of lower class areas. Nothing ever happened. It seems like there's a lot of areas where you can feel really, really safe. And like you said, Panama City has like a first world feel, and I definitely felt that going to some malls and other stuff. So can you talk to us a little bit about the safety, number two?
Yeah, safety is huge. Panama is one of the, if not the safest countries. The crime rate is very low. Even in what are considered the more dangerous parts of the city, if you go during the day, you're fine. You're not going to have any issues. You don't want to walk down dark alleys at night by yourself. But
anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. A lot of people have a concern when they think of Panama, and it's really because people don't know about Panama.
Yeah.
So they think, is Panama safe? I hear a lot of my clients that are moving here, they hear from their friends tell them it's dangerous down there. You sure you want to move to Panama? It's like, listen, Panama is much safer than many cities in the United States.
Right.
So when you're thinking about moving to Panama, and you're concerned about safety, that's a totally valid concern. You have to think about that. But what I can tell you is that in my experience, living here for 12 years, I always feel safe. And I can't even remember like a shooting or any kind of crime that's happened. Overall, Panama is one of the safest countries in the world.
One thing I found out when I was living in Costa Rica before this, and then I came here, is I actually felt like this country and Panama City felt even safer than San Jose, Costa Rica, and many parts of Costa Rica. And it was so bizarre for me to feel that and to notice that, because Costa Rica is famous for being the safest country.
Yeah.
And it totally is in my perspective. I mean, when I was there, I was like, I don't feel that safe here. I mean, nothing ever happened to me, but the feeling of unease was higher in Costa Rica than here in Panama. If you've heard that from your clients, did they mention that as well?
Yeah, I mean, from my personal experience, having lived in both countries, when I would be walking down the street in San Jose, I always felt like I had to hold my hands on my pockets.
Yeah.
There are a lot of pickpocketing, like petty crime. You don't even get that in Panama City.
Yeah.
Overall, you can walk around and feel safe. Now, there are areas that you don't want to walk around in. When you come down here, you learn what those areas are.
What would be an example of like two areas not to walk around in Panama City?
One area is a neighborhood called Chorrillo. It's a poor part of Panama City. Not to say that it's overly dangerous, but it's an area where if you want to go there, you should go with someone that knows the area, because it is rich in culture. It's an old city. It has a very rich history. There's a reason why it is how it is.
Downtown Panama City is pretty rough so far.
It's interesting to learn about.
Yeah.
But if you want to go there, go with someone that knows it, or just don't go there. I drive through there every day and never feel like it's overly dangerous. Chorrillo will be one of them. And then, some areas of San Miguelito, further out from Panama City. Mm-hmm. For the most part, though, those aren't really areas that you would ever go. Like, you can live here and never, ever go to those areas.
Exactly.
So,
you might not even know they exist when you live here.
You could live here for 20 years and never step foot in one of those neighborhoods. So it's not like you're going to accidentally end up in a Chorrillo without knowing it.
Right.
If you do, and it's during the day, just remain calm and
take a taxi
and get a taxi. Tell them to take you back to Old Town or downtown, and you'll be fine. Yeah. So it's all about common sense.
Yeah.
Keep your guard up like you would in any city. But I assure you that Panama City, you for the most part always feel safe.
So number 2 on benefits for living and things you like most is safety. How about number 3? How about like personal hobbies? Like, for example, you did wakeboarding back in California. Is it easy to find water sports and surfing, the stuff you did back at home? Is it easy to find here?
Wakeboarding hasn't caught on here. I grew up doing wakeboarding, and there are people that do it, but it's a little bit more of a trek. But there are a lot of fun things that you can do living in Panama City or anywhere in Panama that they're very accessible. One is surfing. So there are some of the best waves in this region in Panama. It's a drive, so it's a little road trip. They're from an hour and a half to, 4.5 hours from the city, but it's easy to get there. There's one highway that runs through Panama. You get on that highway and you go in one direction, and you just have to know where to get off. You have a huge variety of really good places to go surfing and beautiful beaches. And then that ties into the fact that one of the things that I think is amazing about Panama is that it's a place where people go on vacation. So, I live here, and I take it for granted a lot of times that people are coming here for their annual vacation. There's some of the most beautiful places in the world right here in Panama.
Right.
Multiple beautiful beaches on the Pacific side, and on the Caribbean side, we've got Bocas del Toro on the Caribbean, which is a group of islands that are just beautiful, tropical, green and lush with turquoise water. Same with the San Blas Islands, which are closer here. It's about 2-hour drive from Panama City, straight across to the Caribbean. You get on a boat with the local indigenous Punayala tribe that have people that will take you to these islands and show you where they live. They show you how they live. You kind of integrate with the local indigenous, which is amazing. And then you get to go snorkeling and just enjoy the beauty of it, because it's got that white coral sand. And they're just
typical Caribbean look.
It's
Doesn't
a
it?
typical Caribbean with the palm trees. So it's an amazing experience. If you come to Panama, it's one of those things that you have to do.
My friends actually just arrived to Bocas del Toro last night. I suggested to them, I said, if you want to go to a cooler place, maybe Boquete or Valle de Anton. And if you want to go to like one of the best beaches, I went to the first place I visited when I came to Panama was Bocas del Toro. I'm like, man, this place is unbelievably gorgeous. And if you want to watch the video, it's just a very short experience I had there, but I posted my experience on the channel, so you can watch this next video on here. So I had a great experience going to Bocas del Toro, and I actually didn't even know it existed before. When I was in Costa Rica, some people were like, "Are you going to Bocas?" I'm like, "What is Bocas?" And then I went there. I'm like, "Man, this is unbelievable! It's so good." And to be honest, I think it's probably far more beautiful than the beaches I saw in Costa Rica were. It's kind of crazy how amazing they are. Do you think the nature is your number 3 for your favorite things about Panama?
Yeah, I would say number 3 is just the natural beauty, the nature, and having access to places that people come on vacation. I'm just maximum 6 hours away from some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. There's a lot to be said about that. It's a great experience. So overall, there's so much to see here. There's so many options.
Besides the beach option, there's also mountainous options, right? Like I just climbed the volcano Baru, and that's a whole different experience, but that's another thing that ties into nature. A natural dormant volcano you can climb, and it's not, 6 hours from Panama City? I went there, I just came back, and absolutely loved it, right? So.
Exactly. Boquete is like a mountain town. You feel like you're in a little mountain village. If you came from Panama City, you would be like, am I in the same country?
Yeah, it seems so different.
It's so different. You're up high. The weather's very cool. It actually gets cold at night. It's the only place in Panama where you get cold. I'll go up there and I haven't felt cold for years. So, and it's got the Baru volcano, which you can hike to the top of. And at the top, if you get up there on a clear morning, you can see both the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans at the same time. One of the only places in the whole world that you can do that.
Right. So another awesome benefit of being here in Panama is you have access to basically a place people travel all around the world from to come here to visit, right? And you're just like, okay, well, I live here and I'm just loving it here, right?
That's for me, that is so unique and amazing, and one of the top 3 reasons why I live here in Panama.